I always think that we categorize recruiting wrong a lot of the time because yes, it is an HR category for lack of a better word because you're involved in people and getting talent and having people join a company. But a really good recruiter is a really good salesperson. And the best recruiters that I've met over the past 20 years, they're natural salespeople. They have really good charisma. And the one skill that I got during my IBM sales training that I still use a lot to this day is active listening. Yeah, sure. So my name is Jason Chad. I've been in the recruitment business now for 22 years. I started off my career actually as a sales guy at IBM, and I did that for 4 to 5 years or so. Was really good at it, loved it, but I got to a point where I found IBM was not really right for me. A little big, a little bit too bureaucratic. I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial, and recruiting came calling, and I've been there ever since. And so I love the industry. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. So I started IBM in 1998. I'm a bit of a dinosaur in some ways in terms of how long I've been doing this stuff for. And IBM honestly was a phenomenal place to learn. I got some amazing sales training. I spent, I actually started working in Toronto, and they sent me to Atlanta for 6 weeks for some really intense sales training. So I mean, the sales training I got and the network that I've made there, unbelievable. And I use that network still to this day. So I don't regret at all going to IBM. What I did find was that, like I said before, it was a lot big, and a bit bureaucratic and a bit more slow moving. And I wanted to do a bit more. And one of the great things about recruiting, and not so great things about recruiting, to be honest, is that you really count on yourself. Like, you eat what you kill, for lack of a better word. And so, what I didn't love about IBM is when I was working on a deal, for me to get paid, I needed not only myself to do well, I needed 14 other people on my team and around me and specialists to also do well. And I felt like I was being too much of a quarterback, trying to get all these other people to do things. And I wanted, particularly when I was pretty young in my career at that point, I wanted I want to be able to work hard, make good money, and make more of an impact. And so actually at the time, my uncle had been running a business called Chad Management Group, which is an executive recruitment company, and he'd been doing it for 20 years. And it's funny, if you had asked me beforehand, did I have any interest in joining a family business, I would have said no. And if you asked me today, hey Jason, do you recommend joining a family business? I probably would still say no. It usually doesn't work. But kind of for us, it did. And so, I started interviewing at other places. I had a potential opportunity to go work at Microsoft. But it really felt like that would have been like getting out of the frying pan and into the fire. Like those cultures are very similar. The companies are very similar. And so I had a meeting with my uncle who ran this big recruiting agency. And, hey, Uncle Rick, what do you think? Do I take this job at Microsoft? Do I stay at IBM, or do I try something different? And we had this 2-hour meeting, and I don't know if he sold me or I sold him. Like, I still don't really know how it happened, but next thing you know, I'm working there, and 20 years later, I'm still in the business. So it was obviously the right decision at the time. Oh, 100%. And so I always think that we categorize recruiting wrong a lot of the time because yes, it is an HR category for lack of a better word because you're involved in people and getting talent and having people join a company. But a really good recruiter is a really good salesperson. And the best recruiters that I've met over the past 20 years, they're natural salespeople. They have really good charisma. And the one skill that you really that I got during my IBM sales training that I still use a lot to this day is active listening. And so when I'm talking to a candidate or client, I'm always understanding, okay, well, what makes this person tick? What are they potentially looking for? What would they need in a good candidate? What would they need in a good boss, in a good employer? What culture works for them? And so I'm continually kind of analyzing and figuring that out. And so it's really like a consultative sales approach is what you're taking. And so I think that recruiting is more sales, honestly, than and understanding than anything else. So yes, sales marketing is super important. And this is the kind of the most frustrating part about being a recruiter is that at the end of the day, you don't actually get to make the final decision, right? So you do everything, like it's a job where you can do everything right. Like you can find the perfect candidate, you can find the perfect client, you can match it all up, you can run a great negotiation, the job offer is made, and then something happens out of your control, and the offer gets pulled, the candidate says no, and all of a sudden your deal that you were so close to making, and again, that you've done everything right, and if this has been a normal sales job, you would have closed it, doesn't close. So it's probably the most frustrating part of the job, if I'm being honest. And that's why a lot of recruiters honestly don't make it, because they think it's easy. Then when you get into it, it's not. I guess being an ex-IBM guy, I'm a tech-focused guy first, always. Like I love the technical side of things. And so even when I started at Chat Management Group and I, was helping run the business there, I worked with IBM, I worked with Xerox, I worked with Microsoft, as well as a lot of, I got into working with a lot of different startups. Particularly, there's a big hub of startups in Toronto and Kitchener-Waterloo. So I worked with a lot of those companies. And so I was always doing work on the technical side, but a lot of it was more sales, marketing, product management, and operationally focused. And so I kind of shied away from the technical roles because I'm not a developer, I'm not an engineer, and so I found it a bit disingenuous for me to say, yeah, I'm going to find you the best engineer or the best coder when I don't know how to code, right? And so, but I had clients always ask me, hey, can you also, you've done a great job hiring, finding us a CRO, you've done a great job finding us a director of sales. Can you, can I introduce you to our engineering team? Because they need to find, a CTO or a VP of engineering, whatever. And so what I ended up doing is hiring some really good talent internally that does have those skill sets, right? And so like I'm not the person that you're going to want ever evaluating, hey, is this a better React developer than this one? I don't know, but I have people on my team that do, and so that's but it was really the client needs that kind of forced the issue. And then once I start going down that path, it's amazing how successful it has been, because it really is a booming, growing business, or at least it was until recent times we're having the economy. But even today, we're still doing well. What separates us from other players in the space is, I would say, like there's no gimmicks with us. There's no, fancy, kind of tools that don't work that we pretend they do, and a lot of marketing jargon. We have great people that work for us. I've been doing this for 22 years. I have people that have been on my team now for 10 plus years, and they're really good. And so if you hire, and think, look what we do for a living, right? So if I hire great people internally, we're going to be better recruiters. And so that's our, it's not really a secret, but it is our secret, is we have great people internally to help. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and for 20 years, I've been hearing that, technology is changing everything, and recruiting is going to be totally different. And it's going to go away, or it's going to be, the skills that we have aren't going to be needed anymore. And the more things change, the more things stay the same. And so at the end of the day, I don't care what tools you're using from a technology perspective. I don't care how many different automation tools and generative AI tools you have, that are helping you build your business. At the end of the day, the core skills of connecting with people and understanding what the needs are. And again, like if I have clients all the time say, hey, Jason, here's the job spec. Here's what I'm looking for. And I can read the job spec just as easily as anyone else. But then I call them and then we actually talk about the role. Okay, well, I understand what you've written in the job spec. Let's talk about what you actually want to hire. Because a lot of the time, the job spec is not even written by the person who's doing the hiring. And so you have this conversation that says, okay, well, let's talk about what you're looking for. Let's talk about where you want this candidate to come from. Let's talk about the personality traits you want them to have. And these are all things that technology can't find yet, or ever really, if we're being honest. And so you still need a really good recruiter at the end of the day to do the interviews, to meet with the clients, and to actually get that base understanding. So yes, tech has changed a ton and it's amazing. If you told me 12 years ago how much money I'm spending on tech tools, I wouldn't have believed you. But at the end of the day, the base of what I do really hasn't changed that much. I'm a big believer in AI. I'm a senior advisor on an AI HR tech business in the recruiting space, and so like I do a ton of work in this space. I think there's a lot to be gained using AI. So like I'm not saying it's I'm not saying don't use it. It's not at a point where it's going to replace people. It's interesting. I was at the Collision event in Toronto a couple weeks, I guess a month or two ago, and it's a big tech conference, and they have tech companies from all over come. And there's one tech company, and they were what they were doing was they were using ChatGPT to create job descriptions. Which so you basically give it a little bit of information, and then the job spec spits out. I mean, I think Recruit CRM does that too, if I'm being honest, right? So like that's a base tool now that's in a lot of ATSs, right? And I was talking to another company, and what they were doing was they have a tool that will read your current resume or your LinkedIn profile, and then it will also read the job spec, and then it will create a resume for that job, right? And so then all of a sudden we're in this thing where we have resumes being created by AI, and we have job specs being created by AI, and there's no people involved. And so I don't think that works, right? And so at the end of the day, it's you still need the people side of things, because I don't care what it says in the resume. Well, I mean, I would say care, but at the end of the day, like when someone starts working at it somewhere, after they get hired, if what's on the resume isn't true or they've misrepresented themselves, then it's not going to work. And AI doesn't really catch that yet. And again, I don't know if it ever will. Right now, it doesn't. Right now, I think if you're using AI, I love it for some of the matching capabilities. I don't love the ChatGPT stuff as much because I haven't seen it work perfect yet. Working 80% of the time is not great when 20% of the time it doesn't work, and you're sending out blanket emails to 1,000 people, and 200 of those emails don't make sense, right? And then that's still happening, at least on the tools I looked at. So I was using a different, not Recruit CRM. I was trying a different ATS, and I was trying their write a job spec function, right? And because again, curious, I love the text, is curious about it, and so I put in, okay, I'm looking for a VP of engineering, and here's some base criteria, and write me a job spec, and did it. Started writing a job spec, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty good. And then it gets down to near the end about requirements, and it says, okay, requirement 1 has to be in the office every day. By the way, that was not a requirement. At no point did I say that. I don't know where I got that from, but it made that up. And then requirement number 2, it said job is based in Baltimore. And the job was not based in Baltimore. It was a remote job for a Toronto-based company. Nothing to do with Baltimore at all, but for whatever reason, that was in, I like your word, hallucinated. It hallucinated that. I'm like, wow, like imagine I hadn't proofread it. And people are using this stuff to do a lot of biz dev emails. Like I probably get 25 biz dev emails a day nowadays from people clearly using ChatGPT, and 5 to 10 of them don't make sense, right? And so I don't love how this technology is being implemented so far. So it's an interesting question. I don't know if I have a great answer. So I'm gonna be honest with you. A good recruiter, it's almost like you're never off. It's like a lifestyle in some ways. And so like I take calls after hours all the time because that's when I have candidates or clients that want to talk to me. And if a client sends me an email at 9 o'clock at night, right or wrong, I get back to them typically that night if I can, right? Like and that's it's a service business, and so. But that's also, I think, one of the things that's different, and my people are all the same on our team, right? And again, I talked about good people before. I think good recruiters, there's not really an off switch. And it's not an industry for everybody. It really isn't, because I've seen a lot of people burn out because it is nonstop. If I go out for dinner, my wife and I go for dinner, and the people sitting at the table beside us, a lot of the time I'll end up talking to them as well, and I'll find out what they're doing, and I'll find out what jobs they like, because it never really turns off. And so in terms of balance, I wouldn't say balance is the right word. I think that you have to enjoy it, and I think that it has to fit your personality type. And not that it's not work, because you're always working, but it has to be something that you enjoy doing. Because if it's not, it's not going to work for you, or you're not going to be great at it. Recruiting is it's an interesting industry. If you look at the stats, I think it's something like 80% of the placements are made by 20% of the recruiters. Like, most recruiters don't do well. And so it's like real estate in that standpoint, right? Like, where the rich are really rich and the poor are really, really poor. Like, it's a huge dichotomy. And so the people who do well, they don't have the balance that you're talking about, if I'm being honest. I'm talking to people, my friends, colleagues, whatever, like it's all, I don't want to say it's all the same, because I'm not always trying to sell them stuff. So that's not what I mean. What I mean is you're always a recruiter, right? And so is that a pro? It can be. Is that a con? Yeah, it's a huge con too, right? And again, like, I always have this conversation when people get into recruiting, because people see it online and it seems like, hey, it's an easy job and you can make a lot of money, and it's a lot of recruiters are paid by commission. So if you do well, you get paid really well, and so like and there's low barriers to entry to get into the business. So like, a lot of people get into recruiting not realizing what you're actually signing up for. That being said, if you're a really, like, again, going back to your earlier comment of like a really good salesperson, they're also always on, right? Like, if you are, you talk to the top salesperson at most tech companies, and if they're at a restaurant and they meet somebody, they're talking to them and they're finding out what they're doing, and who knows if they can sell them something down the road. Like, it's almost like a personality trait or a character trait. So it's a pro and a con, though. Yeah, I'm a big believer in, I guess, empowering my people. One of the things I didn't like when I worked at IBM is how much time and effort we spent on internal and reporting. And like, I remember at one point, I had a few really big deals on the go, and this is IBM, and I had all these senior people flying in from Rochester to talk to me about these 2-3 deals. And so I'm 24 years old. I'm really young. I have the opportunity to meet a senior VP flying in from Rochester to talk to me about an account. I spend 2-3 days getting ready for that meeting, right? And that's time I was spending on internal, not external selling, right? And then meeting went well, and then someone else flew down, and someone else flew down. And so like, I was spending all this time doing internal stuff, and it was amazing how much time you spent on reporting, and then account ownership, and internal politics. And I own this account, but you own this account, and you're on this. There's a lot of that, and that's most big companies. And so for me, I try and take all of that out of what my team does. I want them focused on recruiting. I want them to be focused on their candidates and their clients, and kind of that's it. And so I don't do formal reports once a week where we sit down for 3 hours and we go through forecasts and pipelines. Now, do I have informal chats with them? Yeah, I talk to them all the time. Hey, how's it going here? How's it going there? but there has to be a reason for me to ask, not because once a week we need to spend 3 hours doing it. The people that work for us are usually a lot more entrepreneurial in their approach and their thinking as well. And the reason they come work for us is because they don't have someone holding their hand and kind of micromanaging them. I have no interest in getting that granular. Now, listen, if you need me to come in and talk to a candidate or talk to a client, I'm happy to do it. I love that part. It's kind of my favorite part, if I'm being honest, is being in front of clients. But if you don't need me, then I'm a resource. Let run stuff by me. I'm good on the strategy side. I can give opinions and thoughts. But again, we more than anything else, we try and hire seasoned people from industry. And so we don't typically hire people right out of school. We don't typically hire people that aren't trained. And so we have someone that's managing our engineering stuff right now. And she was head of talent acquisition at a prior at incubator. And so she worked with a number of VCs helping them get started. And so I don't have to tell her how to recruit. She knows how, right? It does. I think one of the hardest things about this job is that the people that actually need the most help, a lot of time aren't the ones that you're helping, right? And so, it is tough, right? You're looking clients always want to steal people from other places, and they want people that are currently working, and they want people from the competitors, and so you'll have 5 candidates for a job, 2 of them are out of work, and 3 of them aren't even that interested, and you have to talk them into it. And 9 times out of 10, those 3 are the 3 that they want to interview, right? Not the 2 that are looking. And so it is hard. And my rule on this is I'm very open, and I'm very honest, and I'm very direct. And so if a candidate, when I'm telling a candidate they didn't get the job, I'm going to tell them, exactly why, exactly what the feedback was, which, by the way, can make it an even harder conversation if I'm being honest. But my belief here is that candidates deserve to know, and they will then be able to take that knowledge and learn and kind of do better next time, right? And so I hate the response of, you're not moving forward. I don't know why. Better luck next time, because you've given them nothing. And so I'd rather give them as much ammunition as I can, and so that they're better prepared, so they can do a better job next time. But it sucks sometimes. It's hard. I think that clients say a lot of time, they say all the right things, that we're going to we want to provide balance. We want to provide a workplace that is conducive and open. And then they say all the right things, and then they hire people, and it's not that, right? And so I think that we talk a big game in terms of how we want things to be, and then life happens, and then work happens, and demands happen, and results aren't there, and all of a sudden all that stuff goes out the window, and it's like, hey, where are the results? And so it's getting better, but it's still it's not anywhere close to where we think it is. That's what I believe right now, at least. And again, maybe I'm not supposed to say that, but that's. So in terms of quirky techniques, I was at a job fair a couple years ago, and guy in a costume handing out free food to come to his job booth, and it wasn't even I won't say what the job was, what the company was, but this company was known for being pretty conservative, but the recruiter definitely wasn't, and so he's literally wearing a ridiculous costume, and he's handing out bags of chips and drinks and pop and like he created like a party at his booth, and people were all there, and it absolutely worked. And it was just funny because I would never have put that company and that, like, it didn't quite make sense, but it worked for him. This is probably 18 years ago, and it's stuck with me. And so a lot of times when I start interviewing a candidate, we'll go through kind of like, candidates come in always very prepared, right? So, you know, they have an idea of what questions I want to ask them. They have an idea of and so they know, okay, here are my three strengths. Here's my weakness. Here's a situation where I've had conflict. Here's a situation where I've had to go around my manager. Like you know, like they have all the stuff prepared. And so I usually ask them, you know, before we even get going, all right, tell me something interesting about yourself that's not on your resume. Like kind of like you asked me, you know, a kind of an off-topic question, just to, I always want to see how they think and how fast they are on their feet, quick they are on their feet, and then I want to try and kind of engage them more emotionally as well. And so this one candidate, he was in, and I asked him the same thing. Hey, so tell me something interesting yourself that's not on your resume. He's like, well, I was surfing in South Africa and a shark bit off my leg, and he showed me, like, he raised his foot and he had a peg leg, and literally, like, he was surfing and a shark literally bit off his leg, and like, as he had walked in, I guess he was hobbling a little bit. I didn't notice, but I noticed more when he's walking out because I was looking for it. But I mean, to this day, and big smile on his face, like he told the story. He told the story not as a sad story, like at all. And what's even crazier is, so that the shark had bit off his leg. He made it back to shore. There happened to be a nurse on the shore, and literally he married her. Like it ended up being like this crazy happy story. But like to this day, I still have that story in mind. And literally, this is 18 years ago.